1800 Hurricane, 1804 Hurricane. Cam, do you think we have more leverage with D tackles and D ends that's not committed now?
Basically, do we have leverage with any people who are not committed now, or the fact that we don't have any committed now? Does that maybe appeal to guys on the recruiting trail? I would say, I would hope, yes. And I tweeted this after Markeith Williams' commitment yesterday. Said, it's time to start building the beef in this class. We got Flip Carswell at offensive tackle, who's a developmental guy, but he's 6'7", 275, 280-ish. But, I need more beef at the line of attack. I need another offensive tackle. Come on down, Jacob Hood. Come on down, Malik Agbo. Come on down, Julian Armella. One of those guys would be great. Hey, maybe get two of those guys and slide whichever one inside the guard. I'm good with that. But on the defensive side, yeah, we got it. Again, just like I talked about earlier, about the defensive back recruiting this year, going on top of what we've had last year and the year before. We need to do the same thing along the defensive line. So, you do need to hopefully find leverage. And you should be able to say, hey, insert recruit here. Come on down, just like we have Kamari Rogers and Traquan Fegans and Markeith Williams in the secondary, just like we have, what's his face? I don't want to say that, I'm sorry. Just like we have Justin Medlock at linebacker, why don't you come on down here at defensive end? Joel Perez, I don't think that we've lost momentum with Shamar. I just think that it was always going to be a marathon, not a sprint with him. It was never going to be a July 2nd commitment, and then you just ride that out. That was never his process with it, and that's fine. But yeah, it's a marathon, not a sprint. We're in a good spot. There's going to be times where you run flat out. There's going to be other times when you maybe fall back a little bit on your pace, but still are consistently moving forward. I believe that's where we are with Shamar Stewart. But yeah, he and others, at the, along our defensive line, hopefully we're able to use the state of things somehow to get some of those guys.
All right. He's looking for a little position breakdown. Biggest battles, Miami versus Alabama offense and defense.
With Alabama on offense, it's going to be Miami's defensive line, because if they're able to get any kind of pressure on Bryce Young, and so that would disrupt the passing game and or the running game, that would be, I think, the biggest thing. Also, linebacker, just because our linebackers have such a far way to go to get to standard for what performance should be. But that's just in general. So if you want to put those together, which we do sometimes in football, and that's called the front seven. So I would say the front seven of Miami's defense against Alabama's offensive line. If you flip it over the other way, I would have to say Miami. The same thing. It's going to be Miami's offensive line versus their front seven, or their front defensive group. Are we able to hold up, or is it going to be a sieve and some turnstiles like when we played against Florida a couple of years ago? And I know that there were young guys out there, like the 2-star recruit, and he ended up being a left tackle, and I know, but you got to be able to hold the point of attack. And do something, and hey, maybe you scheme around that, maybe go at some tempo, maybe spread them out, maybe you try to go lateral a little bit against their defense, because they are very fast, to try to find a way. Maybe you just there's ways to do things, but yeah, I think both ways it's going to be whichever team's offensive line versus the other team's defensive front. That's going to be the biggest thing, and for me, it's on the side of Miami, because Alabama's bigger and stronger, so you got to find a way to. And that's fine. And we're just built differently than them. But you have to use your speed. You have to use your angles. You have to do maybe some stunting and some blitzing. You have to do something on defense to affect their offense. And then they got some monsters. They're just larger sized in the front seven. And I know that they run that 3-4, that 30 front and everything. But they're just larger guys. And it's guys like Jarez Parks. I don't even know if he plays there anymore. He's a 5-star. He's the 5-star that they gray shirted a couple of years ago, who was Patrick Bethel's cousin. We're going to bring him in to be a defensive end, and he's playing outside backer, And I know, you want to talk about, outside backer and the 3-4 is really the same thing. But a dude that we're looking at to be a point of attack player 100% of the time, he's playing some of that, some rush and some coverage over there. You know what I mean? It's just guys that we would have, yeah, like our defensive ends or their linebackers. And I mean, like all of their linebackers. I mean, they have massive, massive dudes on that defense. So it's just that they're a differently sized team than pretty much everybody out there. So, yeah, our offensive line versus their front seven and then vice versa. That's the thing that's really going to tell a lot of the game to me.
Especially in college football, because of the turnover of the roster and the personnel, there's a bit of more speculation than there would be if we were breaking down an NFL season or a week one game in the NFL.
Right.
But I'll make this point because Najee Harris is gone, Devontae Smith is gone, Jalen Waddle's gone, and the quarterback Mac Jones is gone. But still, we know that their replacements are, I don't want to say just as good. They're unproven, but the ratings and the rankings out of high school are just as good and so forth. Is that Ohio State had the second best roster in the country, the third best, the fourth best, no worse than the fourth best, one of the top four rosters in the country. They did have a huge letdown in the secondary, which was both just, it cycled poorly for them, but they also had injuries. But Ohio State still had talented guys in the secondary, but they went into complete like prevent defense mode, playing off receivers, giving them throws, and it was ugly. It was just ugly from that standpoint. So, that would be one of Miami's worst nightmares, would be just getting into that pitch and catch where guys are just running free in the secondary, and Ohio State just couldn't keep up from that standpoint.
Yeah, and then that's also something that we talked about, or kind of like it earlier. At what point do you go from trying to be competitive to trying not to get blown out? Like, do you change your coverages? Do you change your calls? Do you change your tempo when you have the ball? Like, that could come into consideration, and hopefully it does not. I want Miami to be competitive. I want Miami to win the goddamn game. Okay, everybody? Like, don't sit out here and say, like, I'm a defeatist. Don't. But we've seen this happen. We've talked about it before on this very show when Florida State was kicking our asses and they were winning the national championship and everything. That was a consideration, of like, hey, what is the cost benefit analysis? Like, you're walking that razor's edge saying like, yeah, I want to be as competitive as possible, but I also don't want it to be bad. In the 2014, it was 41-14 up there. 21-14 going into half, and then they, shut us out and scored 3 touchdowns in the second half. Yeah, the year before, we were winning down here, and then they came back and won late. But, like, those are considerations. And in this world where recruiting matters and everything's on television and every great play and every great play for you and every terrible play against you is going to be a video and a GIF and an aggregated piece. And, I mean, we do it at State of the U. Look at this great thing to highlight the highlights, and then the opposition's team is going to highlight their highlight, which is going to be a Miami low light. You don't want to have those things out there. And if you're trying to be proof positive of, proof of concept that you're going to win, if you want to be involved with 5-star Jaheim Singletary, if you want to be involved with Anthony Lucas, 4-star borderline 5-star out of he lives in Arizona now, but he grew up down here in North Miami Beach. Like, if you want to try to make a move on a Jacob Hood, who's trending towards Georgia, but, massive 6'8", 370 offensive lineman. If you're trying to get Malik Ogbo to choose Miami from Washington State to come on down. If you want to create this cachet for Shamar Stewart and Marvin Jones Jr. and Nigel Kelly, Dante Anderson, all these guys that you want to have in this class, right? Jaden Gibson, all these dudes, they're going to see that. And the optics matter. So you cannot just go balls to the wall and say, hey, if we get blown out, we get blown out. You can do that. But I think that's going to have a negative effect. So, like, this is where I bring that up to say the optics matter, and you have to decide and really be in tune with your star player, look in that mirror and say, hey, can we do this? Are we in a position to do this? Are we performing to do this? And to be competitive or potentially win the game or whatever it is? Or are things starting to get away a little bit and we're trying to go Operation Shutdown to make it look halfway decent? Because what you don't want to have happen is what happens when many teams play St. Thomas Aquinas. They get the ball and they score. You get the ball and try to return that opening kickoff, and your kick returner slips over the 7-yard line. Then you run for no gain, have an incompletion, run for a loss of 2. You go to punt the ball gets tipped. They got the ball on the 25. They score again, it's 14-0. Cool, you come on down, you take a deep shot, they get an interception. 3 plays later, it's 21-0, 4 minutes into the game at Brian Piccolo Stadium here in Fort Lauderdale. And they're hyped up. They got that little bitty band that they pipe in through the thing, and they have the glockenspiel, and they're playing that on the little glock, and they're doing all this stuff. The whole student section's there. They're all turned up. They got all these All-Americans. You got Jason freaking Taylor over there on the sideline. You got Roger Harry as their head coach, and he's, and respectfully, and I mean this in the best way, like a Steph Curry way, he's a jerk. Because he wants to just stomp you into and through the ground. And all those guys there, all those players there, they want that too, because they could probably be starring at another school. Some of these guys who are on second and third team. And what do they want? They want a chance to come in and make some plays, because they don't start at Aquinas because they chose to go to Aquinas. Now, all of a sudden, when you get a field goal, cool, they get another touchdown, you get another punt, they take that punt back. It's 35-3 halfway through the second quarter. Right? That kind of a thing is demoralizing. What are you going to do from here? I got a sophomore quarterback on my team, and we're down 5 full scores already. You don't want that same kind of thing to happen at the college level, because, with all due respect, I don't think that we have the horses to come back from that kind of a thing. So you got to manage the game a little bit better, especially up front, so that it doesn't get away from you. And you definitely don't, because everybody's going to watch that game. Everybody's going to see it, and everybody's going to talk about it. Oh, man, we thought they were back. Look, nobody's saying that we're back. But, of course, they're going to use that to put us down. That's why optics matter. I'm telling you guys.
Yeah, and against that team, too. So 21-0 on anybody else on the schedule, even North Carolina, 21-0. I'm still watching the rest of the game. So that's a 3:30 game, week 1. There's probably like 4 or 5 other games, not to that caliber, but decent games on. And if it's 21-0, I may slide to another game and only check back in if it gets to 21-10 or 21-14, because Bama, when do they blow a 21-0 lead? Take anybody else on Miami's schedule. If they're down 21-0 to Pitt, I'm still watching the game, because not that that's a good situation, but Miami can come back from 21 down against Pitt, Virginia, fill in the blank. But against that program, they just don't let that go. And in regards to the comment on the screen about Bryce Young, the only thing I'll say there, because I haven't seen him play enough football, is I think this states a lot. This says a lot, is that I know from having Alabama folks on here and critiquing their backup quarterbacks, Paul Tyson being the backup, are very capable, top 10 at their position, even the third stringer, and very good. And Bryce Young has been, for Nick Saban to have said from the end of last season, he's the starter, and there's been no competition. There's been no stated competition. And we know all over the place that there are some quarterback battles that are pretty well shut down, but the head coach will still report it to be a competition. But Nick Saban's been just out front since the end of last season. Bryce Young's the starter.
I'll put it to you like this. Yes, he's undersized, and we have an undersized quarterback too. He's 5'11", about 185 pounds. He was the number 2 overall recruit in America. He was the number 1 quarterback in America. And 247 Sports has him listed as the number 20 overall all-time recruit in the history of their rankings. I'm going to read you Bryce Young's high school statistics from Mater Dei High School. Again, a premium high school in Southern California, where usually you go there, you win the quarterback job, you go to USC, you might challenge for a Heisman, you might win a Heisman, and then you get drafted highly into the NFL. That is the progression of guys who go to Mater Dei. Everybody knows that school. Everybody knows that program. Everybody knows the quarterback from Mater Dei is one of the premier players in America always. These are his stats from high school. 915 completions and 1,311 throws for 13,250 yards, 152 touchdowns, and 21 interceptions, to go along with 1,084 yards and 26 touchdowns rushing. Now, has he done that at the college level? No. Is he going to 100% be that at the college level? No. But that's the kind of pedigree that he brings. That's the kind of demonstrated performing excellence he has exuded on the field. Again, being the premier player at a premier school that is, for a long time, been known for developing elite quarterbacks. That's how good he can be. That's the kind of player we're talking about. So we're going to have a tall task in front of us to combat that, because he's a guy who has that kind of demonstrated ability. But he's not done it at this level, so I'm not saying it's going to be 100%. But if you're sitting here thinking, well, Bryce Young, I didn't know that name. I don't follow recruiting that much, Cam. Tell me a little bit about it. Da-da-da-da. I just did. Okay, so yes, he could be the next one up and everything, and hopefully we're catching him before he really hits his stride. But it's not going to be. You remember when Brad Kaya first started his opener, true freshman at Louisville, and we ran the original Tecmo Bowl offense, up an A, down an A, left an A, right an A, the 4-play playbook? That's not going to be what is going to be with Bryce Young at the controls. And he can do a lot of things, and he can do a lot of things well. So we're going to have to do a lot of things and a lot of things well to combat the kind of ability that he has as well.